All right, so today we're jumping into Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And let me tell you, it might just be the slap in the face you didn't know you needed. This book completely cuts through all that feel good noise to get brutally honest about what actually matters in life.
And this quote right here, this is pretty much the whole game. It's this idea that flips everything upside down. Manson's point is that our constant, frantic effort to run away from negative stuff, to avoid all pain and struggle, well, that's exactly what makes things worse. It's a total paradox, and it's at the very core of his entire way of thinking. So, that brings us to a really tough question, right? We live in this culture that is just obsessed with being positive all the time. But what if that obsession, that constant chase for happiness, is the very thing making us anxious and unhappy? Let's dig into that. This leads us to the first big concept, what Manson calls the trap of more. Now, the idea is that wanting a more positive experience is, by itself, a negative experience. It sounds a little weird, I know, but stick with me, because this explains so much about why we're all so stressed out. He calls it the paradox of positivity. Think about it. We're just flooded with messages, especially online, telling us to be happier, richer, better looking. But the more we chase that perfect image, the more we see everything we aren't. And it just creates this horrible, stressful loop of blaming ourselves.
So, what do we do about it? Well, Manson frames it in a really simple, kind of brilliant way. Just think of your attention and your energy like money. Every single day, you only have a certain amount to spend. It is not an endless supply.
So you have to ask yourself, where are your coins actually going? Are you spending your energy on things that genuinely bring value to your life? Or is it all just getting drained away by constantly comparing yourself to others and chasing these shallow goals? The whole point is to be way more selective about what you choose to care about. Okay, let's build on that because this next part is a huge mental shift. This is a massive reframe. Problems aren't something to avoid. Problems are the entire point.
You see, life isn't about getting to some magical, problem-free paradise. It's just an endless series of challenges. The solution to one problem basically just creates the next one. And Manson says true happiness doesn't come from getting rid of your problems, but from the actual process of solving them. The joy really is in the climb.
And this illustrates it perfectly. Every single thing we want in life has a struggle that comes with it. You can't have one without the other. You don't just get the shiny reward. You have to be willing to embrace the hard work, the stress, and the difficult conversations it takes to get there.
So the real question isn't, what do I want out of life? A much better, more powerful question is, what pain am I willing to endure? What problems are you actually willing to take on? Because that choice, more than anything else, is what's going to define your life.
All right, this next section, this is a big one. And for a lot of people, it's a huge relief. It's about finding freedom in being average and just letting go of that toxic idea that every single one of us has to be extraordinary. The truth is, most of us are pretty average at most things, and that is completely, totally normal. This chart shows it. But technology and social media, they just flood us with the extreme highlights from that tiny little 0.001%, which makes this big middle section, where almost all of us live, feel like failure. And that pressure to be exceptional, to live in that little sliver at the very top, it is exhausting. It just traps us in this mindset where anything short of absolutely incredible feels like a complete failure. But the moment you accept your averageness, you're free. You suddenly have the space to appreciate the simple, ordinary things that, it turns out, are where real joy is. You know, friendships, laughing, a good book, that's the real stuff. So if the goal isn't to be extraordinary, then what is it? Well, this brings us to our final and most actionable section. We figured out that we have to endure struggle. So how do we make sure we're enduring the right ones? It all comes down to choosing your values. This is the key right here. The things you choose to care about will literally define the problems you have to deal with. If you value money above all else, your problem will be constantly needing more of it. If you value honesty, your problem will be having difficult conversations. Good values lead to good problems. So Manson gives us this toolkit of 5, let's say, counterintuitive values. They might seem negative on the surface, but every single one of them is deeply empowering. Taking responsibility gives you agency. Acknowledging you don't know everything opens you up to learn. Accepting your failures is how you grow. Saying no protects your energy. And thinking about your own death, well, that puts everything else into perspective. You know, let's just zoom in on that first one for a second.
because this distinction is absolutely critical. Faults is about the past. It's about blame. Responsibility is about the present. It's about solutions. Something bad that happened might not be your fault, but it is always your responsibility to decide how you're going to respond to it right now. That is where all your power is. And that brings us back to that final heavy value, mortality. Manson builds on the ideas of Ernest Becker, who argued that our awareness that we're going to die is the secret engine that drives almost everything we do. It's what forces us to create meaning, to try and build something that lasts, and to make our short time here actually matter.
So that's the ultimate takeaway. Death is what gives life its meaning. It's the hard deadline that forces us to stop wasting our limited time and energy on things that just don't matter. So I'll leave you with this to think about. Knowing your time is finite, what struggles are you willing to choose? What truly deserves your attention?